picking up the pieces from where Mr. Sidoti had left. And hence, I'll just speak on the overall position of Bangladesh, so exactly how we feel and where we are about the Rohingya crisis. So instead of going into that presentation, I just have a few questions to ask to this body of students, academicians, perhaps human rights organizations, as to Bangladesh's position. Number one is, as the name of my presentation suggests, are the Rohingyas still remembered? And by who? Apart from Mr. Sidoti. Why is the undue burden on Bangladesh? And how long will Bangladesh continue to carry this undue burden all by itself? That is my question. I would invite further questions afterwards if anyone has answers to these questions. Why is it that there is no accountability? Why is it that Rohingyas don't have the rights to live in dignity in their homeland, which is Myanmar? And no, they are not Bengalis. So going back to the history of Bangladesh and Rohingyas, when we became independent in 1971, and much, much before that, the past 1,000 years, Rohingyas, or the Rohan people, have been part and parcel of Myanmar. At that time, it was Burma, and the name of the place where they had settled, they may, back about 500, even 500 years back, people were coming to the Indian subcontinent and to that region by boats, and Arakan was a seaport and an independent sultanate. And Rohingyas have been living there. And this is true that part of Bangladesh at that time, Greater Chittagong, was part of the Arakan state. And we have Rohingyas in Bangladesh, just like we have Rakhines in Bangladesh. It was all part of a big conglomerate. All kinds of borders and boundaries. They were not like the way they are today. After we've been colonized many times and the new boundaries were settled, and finally after the birth of the United Nations, nation states were created, decolonization took place, and every state got their boundaries. When every state got their boundaries, when people who were domiciled on their territory after the boundaries were created have a right, it's called the ipso facto right to citizenship. Therefore, when Bangladesh was created in 1971, the people who lived in Bangladesh's territory, which we had inherited in 1947 as East Pakistan, all the people that were domiciled on our land got Bangladesh citizenship, except for a small faction who had opted to go back to Pakistan. We call them stranded Pakistanis. They remained in the Geneva camps. So their legal identity was well defined. The question is, when the Rohingyas have been part and parcel of Arakan and later on Burma, even before the British annexation of 1824, up to the 1948, when Burma became independent as Union of Burma, Rohingyas continued to be a recognized ethnicity in Myanmar in its first constitution, which was drafted by Aung San Suu Kyi's father. And when he went to Delhi to negotiate, a Rohingya representative accompanied him. It was only until 82 and after that, through the Citizenship Act, that their ethnicity was officially deleted from Myanmar's list of ethnicities. Many a times, I've been to Rakhine State twice, once with my foreign secretary on a bilateral visit, and the other time with the OIC delegation, the first one that went to visit the Rohingya camps in the northern Rakhine State. And on both occasions, the Rohingyas knew that we were coming. And they kept on giving one slogan again and again and again. They kept on saying, Rohingyas, Rohingyas, Rohingyas. It's the only thing they kept on saying, Rohingyas. They were asserting their ethnic identity. They wanted the whole world to know they're not Bengalis, they're Rohingyas. They have a name, they have a language. Why is that being denied? That is a question that international community needs to ask. Today we've heard Mr. Christopher Sidoti's presentation, who's member of the Independent Commission of the UN, and he has raised many pertinent questions. Few of them is that accountability and future accountability. Coming back to Bangladesh, after we were born in 71, in 1978, the first, of course, from between the period of 48 until 71, we were East Pakistan. And problems were there. Actually, problems started during that period in Rakhine State. After the independence, when Aung San Suu Kyi's father was assassinated, after that, the state started renegotiating as to which are the ethnicities they want to keep and integrate with the Burman people, and which are the ethnicities they cannot tolerate. So I'm not going to go into that, the other states. I'm just going to focus on the Rohingya people. So Rohingyas there were Rohingya MPs and ministers in the governments, and even in the 60s. There was a Rohingya radio. There were Rohingyas who went into delegations to United Nations, and there historical proof to it. However, as the state authorities kept on changing, with time, the positions hardened with gradual extremist militarization. And we saw that there were not systematic push and violations during the period of 48 until 71. But as soon as Bangladesh was created, and obviously we were created through a very tortuous war. It was the war of liberation. We were destroyed and damaged. Our economy was destroyed. And after that, we had to start at a very low economic situation. It was a war-ravaged country, and our father of the nation was assassinated in 1975 at the height of the Cold War. And our country itself was taken over by military dictators for 15 years. And during the first 5 years of that military dictatorship, first 3 years, in 78, for the first time, 200,000 Rohingyas were, just like they fled to Bangladesh in August 2017, they fled to Bangladesh. Because again, houses were burned, they were persecuted, they were killed, women were raped, similar kinds of crimes were committed on them. And they all, en masse, fled into Bangladesh. In 78, our military leader at that time negotiated very toughly with them and said that you have to take them back. And at that time, an agreement was signed between the two foreign ministries in which the Rohingyas were recognized as Myanmar citizens. We have that document. It's a historic document, an agreement that was signed, and they took them back, all 200,000. Then for 15 years, we were sort of a military autocratic rule, and then in 91, again, democratic elections were held in Bangladesh, and immediately in 92, again a situation was created, just like Christopher has mentioned, very well designed, very well thought out. This is a good time to push more Rohingyas to Bangladesh. And hence, again, a wave of persecution started, and Rohingyas en masse, 250,000 of them, again fled to Bangladesh. This time, we sat down with them and negotiated the second agreement. The second agreement, they recognized the Rohingyas, so they had watered down the legal definition of Rohingyas, and this time they mentioned the Rohingyas were residents of Myanmar. And this is how the agreement was signed. In the first case, it was totally bilateral. In the second case, we engaged the UNHCR through mutual agreement. And repatriation started from about 1995, and within 10 years, 220,000 Rohingyas were repatriated through a mutual verification process. 20,000 of them stayed back in the camps, which we call the Rohingya refugee camps. However, between the period of 2005, there were change of government, change of administration in both countries. Some things didn't work out, and the repatriation of the balance 20,000 didn't take place. Repatriation stopped for 4 years, between 2005 until 2009. And when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina came to office in 2009, her government immediately went. She sent a foreign minister to Myanmar. Her top priority was that to settle all the unresolved issues with our immediate two neighbors. We share 4,500 kilometers of land boundary with India, and we share 271 with Myanmar. Over the past 10 years, from 2009 to 2014, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina took the initiative to settle our maritime boundary, our land boundary, which hasn't been settled for since 1948, since post-independence until 2014, with India. When Prime Minister Modi was elected, during that tenure, all the land boundary issues between Bangladesh and India was resolved. The maritime boundary issue with India, maritime boundary was resolved in 2014. However, this particular issue with Myanmar was never resolved. And we share 4,500 kilometers of land boundary with India. This is the indication that there was no political will on part of Myanmar government to actually resolve these issues. So we did resolve our maritime boundary with Myanmar. We agreed to file our claims to the ICLOS, and the International Tribunal in the Law of the Sea settled our maritime boundary in a wonderful manner, and both countries were happy. However, while we have 50 different levels of 50 different institutional mechanisms of engagement with India, we only have one with Myanmar, which is the Foreign Office consultations. We still couldn't succeed in having any border guards talks. We couldn't succeed in having perhaps one until very recently, the first Home Minister's visit. And still, yet, we don't have actually any forum like the Home Ministers. With India, we have the Joint Boundary Working Group, we have Home Ministers Forum, Home Secretaries Forum, Border Guards Forum, District Commissioners Forum. Every level there's a forum where they meet every 3 to 4 months. With them, we have only one with Myanmar, which is Foreign Office consultations, which is led by the Foreign Secretary. From our side, Mr. Shahidul Haq, and from their side, their Permanent Under-Secretary. And hence, in 2009, when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina sent a foreign minister to discuss that we need to really have excellent relations and focus on bilateral trade, connectivity, energy cooperation, we've been asking Myanmar to share their gas with us. So, all these kinds of economic prosperity issues for regional security, regional prosperity, counterterrorism, transnational crimes, which is rampant between Bangladesh and Myanmar border. However, during that time, between 2009 and 2011, the relationship started building. And Christopher has mentioned about June 2012. Just before June 2012, in 2011, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina visited Myanmar. And it was agreed that the Myanmar president would visit Bangladesh in June 2012. We prepared, and one of the key focus of the visit was that while the Myanmar president would be visiting, we would be preparing a delegation, the repatriation process will resume, and we will send back the first batch, our token batch of Rohingya refugees from the camp during the president's visit. the moment that message, the President visit was supposed to be June 15, and this happened on June 12. They created very well-designed, well-orchestrated incident, and these are all alleged, so I'm not claiming these are all true, but this is alleged. And due to that, the visit was postponed. And Myanmar president never came to Bangladesh ever again. In fact, no Myanmar president came. And that was the beginning of making sure that no Rohingya who has crossed the border into Bangladesh ever goes back. And then started the campaign as to send more Rohingyas to Bangladesh through persecution, I don't want to mention those, and Christopher has already mentioned that. Now our question is, Bangladesh, which is already given its sovereign space, more than 6,000 acres in Cox's Bazar, has been totally felled. There are no trees there. We are now readying a large island, it's called Bhashanchor, that's going to relegate 100,000 because their camps, the population density in the camp is unbearable. Mr. Siddhi just mentioned that, the situation in the camps is deplorable, but the situation on the other side is unbearable. And if anyone has to really give relief, this work should start in Myanmar's Rakhine state. We have huge burden on our economy. In fact, there are other problems of sovereignty where we have large presence of international community in Cox's Bazar, and frankly, nothing is in our hands. It's all decided by the entire coalition of international development partners as to how things will be done. We do have a national committee, but little is in our hands. If you ask me, that's my opinion. The UN Security Council, United Kingdom took the initiative for a resolution. But before that, there's a history of resolution since this incident happened. So after August 2017, there's the UN General Assembly Third Committee that deals with human rights in the General Assembly. There was voting on the situation. But by the way, before that, until 2011, since there was talk about elections in Myanmar and the return of democracy, and the state councillor was elected, from just before that year, the EU, which had traditionally brought a resolution on this issue for the past 20 years, before 2013, decided to withdraw that resolution. And then there was some pressure for some countries. Again, the resolution was tabled, but it was a very watered-down resolution. It was adopted by consensus. Before that, voting used to take place on that resolution. So there was no resolution. There was a resolution by consensus, which was a toned-down resolution, until 2017. This happened. Again in 2017, there was a resolution on human rights situation in Myanmar, and in the voting, it was the EU, the OIC. In the first resolution was tabled by OIC. The EU had abstained at that time, and few countries, about 10 countries, voted against, which was of course the Buddhist ASEAN, Russia, China. And among those who abstained, our neighbor India was also there, and a few other countries. And then in March 2018, there was a resolution of the Human Rights Council. And again, we've noted, I'm just briefing you on the voting patterns. It tells you about geopolitics on this issue. And in Geneva, at the Human Rights Council, as you know, the Human Rights Council has 47 members and elected members, and only they can vote. So there are 3 countries who voted against, which was again Russia, China, and perhaps, I don't know, Philippines? Philippines. They have their geopolitical reasons or their national reasons why they're voting against. As you know, Philippines itself has moral Muslim problems, and it's a position of stance that they have taken consistently. And of course, Russia, China being Security Council members, they have been opposing this resolution even in the Security Council, and actually they have thwarted down an attempt by the United Kingdom to draft a resolution on the Rohingya situation. In fact, that could have taken care of the accountability issue. There was a prospect of that. So that was shot down towards the end of 2018, actually the UN fact-finding mission led by UK PR Ambassador Karen Pierce, when she went back after the fact-finding mission, that's the time when they decided that we need to draft a resolution or discuss one on the situation in Myanmar and the accountability factor. But like I said, it had died down before it saw the light of the day because of opposition from certain members of the Security Council. So this has been the voting pattern in the UN and the security, in Geneva. And after that, Bangladesh in 2018 took over the chairmanship of the International Islamic Conference of Foreign Ministers, which is the Foreign Ministers Forum for OIC. And as the chair, when we hosted the ICFM in Dhaka in 2018, Gambia had demanded that there should be a separate statement on the accountability factor, on the accountability question of human rights and accountability question on the Rohingya issue. And that a declaration was adopted. Subsequently, the Gambia has informed the OIC members that they are willing to submit some communication to the International Court of Justice. On the other hand, I don't know if Chris has mentioned, but the International Criminal Court, the chief prosecutor found grounds, at least he or she expressed her intention that there are grounds and evidences to create a case where they felt that some crimes against humanity or atrocity crimes were committed and there were grounds and evidences to initiate such an action. This is where things stand right now as far as Bangladesh witnesses the accountability factor. At this point, there's even suggestion, some random senator from the United States, that why don't you give the Rakhine state to Bangladesh along with the Rohingyas? Suggesting that, well, this is just a perception, and this is a suggestion from many, Rohingyas are Muslim. Why don't you just send them from Buddhist Myanmar and send them to Muslim Bangladesh? Just lump them up. This is the state of international law. When we have resolutions, we have institutions such as the Human Rights Council, General Assembly, International Criminal Court, ICJ, independent tribunals, but this is the state of affairs when it comes to Rohingyas. I hope you know that. It's kind of banana republic, but we are accepting it. My question is, why is Bangladesh being victimized? Injustice is being done to the Rohingyas, but injustice has been done to Bangladesh as well. A great injustice is being done to Bangladesh. Our Prime Minister, in 2017 August, when they first flooded into Bangladesh, went to visit them. And she said, in 1971, when we had state-sponsored killings and genocide and crimes against humanity committed on the soil of Bangladesh, 10 million refugees went, 10 million people fled to neighboring India. And we know exactly how the Rohingyas felt, because they were persecuted. They ran in the fear of life. They were raped, they were enslaved, they were tortured, they were killed, the babies were killed. And this is not me saying, this is Rohingyas who come to Bangladesh. This is their first-hand accounts that they have given to people of what happened to them. And from that perspective, it was only normal that Bangladesh would give refuge. But we knew that there's a war and we had a home to come back to. The difference here is that Rohingyas have a home, but they don't know if they can go back there. So we thought, last two times they came, we negotiated, they'll go back. But the last two times, there was a geopolitics involved in it. This time, because geopolitics is involved, there's no solution to the problem. How can you pardon that? So if you look at the voting patterns in the General Assembly and in the Human Rights Council, will give you a clear picture as to where everybody is standing on this issue. So there's China, Russia, Japan, who are voting against it. Could be economic interest, could be many interests, could be geopolitical interest, could be nationally principled position that they maintain about insurgency, minorities. I'm not sure, and I don't want to comment. I'm not competent to comment on that. But the question is, what is the vast majority of human rights community doing about it? Why is it that the Rohingya people are almost forgotten? Day before yesterday, there was a debate at the UK Parliament. There is an all-party parliamentary group on Rohingyas, which is chaired by Anne Main MP on the all-party. She's also the chair of the all-party parliamentary group in Bangladesh, and co-chaired by Rushnar Ali, who's a Bangladeshi British origin MP. They put forward a great debate, but Bangladesh wasn't even invited there. This is the problem. The greatest sufferer of this problem after the Rohingyas is Bangladesh. And yet, we are never called in to say what we want to say. So this is our story. We feel that a great injustice is being done to Bangladesh too, by not taking any accountability of the crimes that have been committed. Now, there can be two interpretations, and I'm going to end here with that. My question is, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said in 2017 in an Al Jazeera interview that, that very morning, she attended the UN Secretary General's reception for all heads of state and government. And President Trump had a bit of conversation with her. And Al Jazeera interviewed her and asked her that this morning when you spoke with President Trump, didn't you ask him to support you and provide humanitarian assistance or take some of the Rohingyas as a third country rehabilitation? And that happens all the time. She said that, how can I ask US President to do so? I know that his country has positions on taking in Mexican or Syrian refugees or migrants, so obviously I didn't say that. But I just want to make it very clear that we face the same situation in 1971, we understand their pain. If we can, we are a poor country, we're not a rich country, but we are ready to share our meals with the Rohingyas, we're ready to share our space with the Rohingyas temporarily, until they can go back safely and return with dignity to their homes. This was her answer. My question is, the international community should not take advantage of our generosity. We clearly feel that we've been taken advantage of and we've been taken for a ride. I think if we just leave, if somebody suggests that Rohingyas are fine in Bangladesh, they should be left there, then what message are we giving? We are saying it's absolutely fine for a state to persecute their minorities. It's absolutely fine to create monodimensional societies. It's absolutely fine to rape women, make them pregnant, enslave them, and throw them to another country. But it's not fine. And you have to do something about it. Thank you.